Hello YouTube, this is Fernando Comics. A couple days ago I posted this little poll and it got 48,000 votes by the time I took this screenshot. And most of you voted for every Wolverine versus Spider-Man fight, so that's exactly what we're going to do today. Little fun fact, the entire population of Maple Valley, Washington would have voted for Spider-Man versus Wolverine. And those are some serious numbers, boys. First things first, guys, let's explain how this is going to work, okay? We're going to take a look at all of their fights, and then we're going to score them on what we think is a victory, a loss, or a tie. A lot of you have some seriously strong feelings on this topic too. I could tell from the comments under the poll that you have a very particular vision already of how this is going to go, so I would stick around till the end if I were you guys, because I guarantee you're going to be just slightly shocked. But before we do that, let's go over the rules. The first way to get a victory is by KOing your opponent. That's pretty natural, right? We can all agree with that one. You knock the other guy out, you win the fight. The second rule will be causing the death of your opponent. The third victory condition is going to be an incapacitation. So in other words, getting them to a state where they can't defend themselves. The fourth victory condition is going to be a significant advantage. So if someone slaps the other dude around the entire fight, but no one's KO'd or dead, I'm still going to give him the win. And last, it's a forfeit or surrender. Someone gives up, someone calls it quits, that's going to be a win for the opposite opponent. It won't apply to these set of matches, but for anyone wondering, a battlefield removal will be counted under incapacitation in this case. This next set of rules, though, is what makes a fight. We can't have any interaction between the two counting as a fight and a victory, so we need two clear rules, and one of those rules is violent intent. They both have to have some malicious intent towards each other or a provocation that would constitute the beginning of a fight. And the second rule is there has to be mutual resistance, meaning Spider-Man can't just sit there and wail on Wolverine while he crosses his hands behind his back. And then we'll say that he won the fight despite Wolverine's heart not being into it, you see? And as a quick little side note here, all of these fights will consist of Wolverine's body and Peter Parker's body. As soon as you heard that, I bet you guys know what I'm referring to by specifying that. This way we eliminate clone shenanigans, but if someone, say, possessed Peter Parker and used his body to beat Wolverine into the ground, I'm gonna count that one. All right, you guys, let's get started with the first fight. The first time Spider-Man and Wolverine met each other was in Secret Wars, Marvel Superheroes #3, and Spider-Man actually fights the entire X-Men in this one. After Spider-Man overhears what he interprets to be some malicious plans from the X-Men, he pounces on them and he fights everyone. He webs Colossus, he dodges Cyclops, who shoots at light speed by the way, and he slaps Wolverine out of the way with very little effort. Then he makes his escape. Here's the issue, you guys. This is probably one of Spider-Man's best feats, like ever, doing that well against the X-Men. But he didn't really beat Wolverine. He just slapped him out of the way. He dodged the punch and slapped him. He definitely got advantage, but Wolverine really wasn't too slowed down by that. He was running in the next panel essentially, and then Spider-Man made his escape. I can't give that fight to anyone, guys. We're gonna score that one a draw. Score stays at 0-0 to start the game. This next issue, Spider-Man versus Wolverine, is probably their most classic issue that people think of when they think of Spider-Man versus Wolverine. The two start off fighting in a graveyard, and this is no holds barred. Wolverine may not necessarily be trying to kill him, but he's swinging like he is, and Spider-Man absolutely lays into him with everything he's got. He figures he needs to knock him out, but Wolverine takes it extremely well and knocks him on his back. And then the fight itself ends when the two get each other into what would be a kill situation. Meaning Spider-Man could snap Wolverine's neck, and Wolverine could impale him through the head. But Wolverine knows that Spider-Man's not going to do that. So he feels less threatened by Spider-Man because he knows he's not about to get his neck snapped, even though Spider-Man could. The truth is, if that fight continued and Wolverine felt like it, he could have killed Peter. But Peter could have killed him too, and no one did anything of the sort, so I don't feel comfortable scoring this as a win for Wolverine necessarily, just because he was bragging more at the end about it. The fight itself was also extremely close, blow for blow basically. Well, Spider-Man landed more, but of little consequence unfortunately. So given what we saw there, I'm going to say that this is once again a draw. And that means we stay scoreless into the third round. The third fight between these two is Marvel Comics Presents number 48. And I'll get these as closest as possible to chronological order as I can, you guys, but some of them might be one issue off. Apologies, handsome lads. Spider-Man actually starts this fight by trying to dive bomb Wolverine from where he was swinging at, but what ends up happening is he gets juked once, he gets juked twice, and then he gets backhanded into the wall behind him. After that, Spider-Man, he picks up the pace, and he lands a very solid shot, but he gets immediately countered by Wolverine, who then pops his claws, and Spider-Man starts to consider that maybe we should start to talk this one out. Maybe my actions are being a little irrational. So that ends the fight, with Spider-Man refusing to continue. However, with neither combatant down, or with a significant advantage, they were both at a fair distance from each other. No one was particularly hurt. I'm gonna have to score this one once again, a draw. So we stay scoreless into the 4th round now, boys. Round 4 happened in Spider-Man number 12 by McFarlane, of all people, the legendary McFarlane. This could be my favorite art of Spider-Man ever. Like, this is the Spider-Man that I think of when I think of classic Spider-Man comics. And this fight between the two is a little bit tricky, and it's going to get a little controversial because there isn't that much fighting. But Wolverine grabs Spider-Man by the neck and he pops his claws one at a time as a warning, essentially saying, let me give you 3 reasons for why you shouldn't touch me. However, the problem is that Spider-Man did grab Wolverine. He grabbed him by the shoulder in an attempt to keep him in place so he wouldn't go off with Wendigo and do Wendigo things. And then Wolverine put him up against the wall and would have killed him. Like, one of his claws was touching his nose. Ooh, you guys aren't gonna like this one, but I'm gonna score that one as Wolverine's first win of the series. Spider-Man was completely helpless. Wolverine reacted so quickly that he managed to grab Spider-Man by the throat, which is insane. If it had been anyone else, he would have killed him. I've got to give that one to Wolverine, even if it's not the greatest victory in all of comic history. Moving on. This next fight comes to us in Punisher number 34. And this particular fight was actually written by none other than Garth. Oh God. So this fight's kind of a nasty one for Peter. You see, Wolverine's getting abused by everyone in this fight except for Spider-Man. Punisher breaks his nose, so Daredevil orders Spider-Man to stop Wolverine from cutting him in half, essentially. But Wolverine just rips off the part of the wall that's attached to the webbing, which he can do. He's actually really strong. People don't usually know that. And then when Spider-Man tries to restrain him, Wolverine kicks him in the dick. That is a certified Garth Ennis special. And believe it or not, Spider-Man drops to the ground and doesn't get up until the fight is over. If that sounds crude to you, I urge you to remember that this is the man who wrote Crossed. He was able to fathom a man assaulting a dolphin through its blowhole. Yeah, that's real. I was gonna say look it up, I don't know what's the matter with me. Don't look it up, or do so in your free time and tell me what you thought of it. The point remains though, Spider-Man went down. That's a win for Wolverine, that's 2 in a row, guys. The next time these two guys fight will be in Astonishing Wolverine number 2. And they actually have another fight in the next series. This is a 6-issue miniseries, and it's written by This is a really quick one, you guys. Wolverine knocks out Spider-Man in one hit to the back of the head. However, there was no malicious intention from Spider-Man towards him, and he didn't have a chance to fight back. That is a certified cheap shot. Sort of like the 10 years of certified cheap shots that Jason Aaron took at Thor while he was writing him, right? But because of that, this is going to be a no contest. No win for anybody. The two of these guys fight again in the next issue of Astonishing Wolverine number 3. But this time there's a little bit more substance to the fight. This one's actually going to count as a conflict. Essentially, Wolverine actually dies in the series, and Spider-Man finds a way to bring him back. Wolverine comes out feral because he has freaking mental issues. But then Peter flashbacks to high school when Flash Thompson would tell him that he wanted to sleep with his hot aunt. So he starts going feral back at him, and the fight gets interrupted before any substance can happen, essentially. Leading to a quintessential comic draw. Moving on to the next fight. This leads us to Marvel Team Up number 1 with one of their most iconic modern fights, and this is written by Kirkman. If that sounds familiar, it's this Kirkman. Yeah, and Invincible appears later. That was a pretty good issue too. Invincible teams up with Spider-Man, he says some fairly racist things, and then he leaves. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Right off the bat, Spider-Man wins. That is a full-on incapacitation. Wolverine gets his hands glued to his head and he has to like stab himself in the head to get free. Yeah, this scan comes up a lot when people are arguing with Wolverine versus Spider-Man. Anyways, Spider-Man gets on the board with his first win. The next fight happens in Marvel Knights Spider-Man number 13. Look at that cover. There is something eerily wrong about that cover. Let's check. Wolverine 5'3". Now let's see Mary Jane. It's officially canon. Wolverine was wearing 7-inch heels in that cover. This is how they're drawn in the comic itself. That art is horrendous, by the way. Oh, and Mary Jane was definitely not cheating with Wolverine. She calls him a hairy midget she'd never be attracted to in the next page. However, the fight in this comic is fairly intense because even though Mary Jane was not planning on cheating or anything, Wolverine was flirting with her and Peter saw it. So naturally, Captain America has them spar against each other during training, and in response to Peter's fairly reasonable outrage, Wolverine stabs him in the chest. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I get like fairly annoyed with Wolverine because for whatever reason, for the many reasons of course he has to have these mental issues, he freaks out when someone gets butcher knives in an organ essentially. After that, he like gaslights Spider-Man and says like, come on, it's just a scratch. I only stabbed you like 3 times, come on. Then the fight gets separated by Iron Man, but Spider-Man actually shakes him off and he goes back to the fight. And then he passes out from blood loss. That is not a good look, Peter. And then Wolverine's just like, the kid needs to grow up fast. I got stabbed as a baby every day. Regardless, we have a passed out Spider-Man due to Wolverine's actions, so that is another win for Wolverine. For our next matchup, this one's going to take place in the Amazing Spider-Man number 522. And this is written by Straczynski and drawn by Deodato Jr. What a combo, am I right? That is peak comics to me. Like, Deodato might be my favorite artist, and Straczynski's right up there with the top authors. But this fight isn't much of a fight. Spider-Man tosses Wolverine out a window because he was being a dick, and he wins. This is sure to be a little controversial too, but I'm going to count it as a fight, and here's why. Wolverine straight provokes him. Basically says his wife is stupid for picking him in the first place. And he has time to see Peter Parker's expression change. He would have had time to see Peter come towards him and pick him up and toss him out the window. Given the provocation from Wolverine, I'm going to say that he was ready for a fight. And because he was, that's a win for Spider-Man. So the next fight between these two happens in Fallen Sun number 2. This is around the events of the death of Captain America. The issue is drawn by the now legendary Ed McGuinness, and it's authored by So around the time that Captain America died, this was a very sensitive time period for the Avengers, because this was still during the middle of Civil War. Or rather, at the end of it, but you had a rogue Avengers team and you had the main Avengers team. The main Avengers team being the Mighty Avengers with like Iron Man and Wonder Man and the Sentry. And the new Avengers team being the dudes who would not register with the government to continue being superheroes like Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Daredevil, etc. So when Captain America died, Wolverine had to investigate in private because he also didn't register. He found out Cap was dead and he came back to report it to the Avengers, but he was like really nonchalant and rude about it. So Spider-Man took it very sensitive, and he basically tells Wolverine, as you can see on the panel, he's like, shut up, stop talking about him that way. And when he grabs Wolverine by the collar and pushes him, Wolverine brings out the equivalent of 6 butcher knives because that's a proportionate reaction to being touched on the collar. Spider-Man lands a fairly solid punch, then Wolverine responds to it by putting him up against the wall and like threatening to murder him. And then the fight gets separated by the Thing. Once again, you guys, it is an inconclusive and quintessential comic draw. Here's where it gets interesting, guys, with Avenging Spider-Man number 16. This is during the infamous period where Spider-Man was essentially possessed by Doc Ock. And during one of these issues, he gets into direct conflict with Wolverine. And he beats the crap out of him. Doc Ock being notorious for not holding back in Peter Parker's body, like when he punched the jaw clean off of Scorpion, does the exact same thing to Wolverine and beats him within 3 pages, knocks him out cold too. It wouldn't be fair of me to say though that Wolverine wasn't holding back. He totally was. He didn't even pop his claws, which is a rare thing for him. Like, I admire his self-restraint of not attempting to murder his friend this time. But he loses about as clearly as it gets. So with that, Spider-Man wins and he evens the score for about 2 seconds, because they have another conflict in the same issue, and I'm going to count that one as a win for Wolverine. Here's why, you guys. I know that doesn't feel very satisfying to call this a fight, but Spider-Man sensed Wolverine's violent intent, mocked him, tried to get away from him, and was restrained and put in such a situation whereas Wolverine could have killed him if he wanted to. And there's no reason for Doc Ock to have let himself get caught like that. He did not want to get exposed. It was the main reason that he was trying to wriggle away in the first place. So given the heavy disadvantage he was left in, and the fact that Wolverine basically imposed his will this time, I gotta give it to Wolverine, and that makes it 4-3. We made it pretty far, you guys, because this is the most modern fight between the two, and the last fight of this video before we get the final winner. This is from the most recent Spider-Man Annual, Contest of Chaos #1. But the mind control basically just makes them very aggressive towards each other. So they have a fairly prolonged fight for comic book standards these days. And Wolverine benefits a lot from being in a feral and aggressive state due to mind control, and it gets pointed out during the comic. Spider-Man responds to this typically how you would think he would. He notices there's something wrong with him, and he starts slacking off during the fight a bit. And because of that hesitance, Wolverine eventually does get the upper hand and wins the fight. Spider-Man passes out when he gets returned back to New York City, and Wolverine walks off with the objective complete. It would be unfair of me to say that Wolverine only won that because of Spider-Man's hesitance though. Spider-Man tried to web him up a couple times during that fight, and either Wolverine managed to find to get it off him, or he would slash it in mid-flight towards him, which is really impressive. And overall, for whatever Spider-Man had, Wolverine had a counter to it in this fight. So that's going to conclude our last fight between these two guys. And with that, the score ends at 5-3, Wolverine wins. I gotta be honest, you guys, I was a little bit surprised about the comments I read underneath the poll that I made, because a lot of people thought it was going to be an overwhelming victory for Spider-Man. And I knew that couldn't be the case, because there just aren't that many comics where he gets overwhelming wins on Wolverine. And one of the big issues about it too is a compatibility issue, for sure. A power compatibility issue, but also a personality compatibility issue. Spider-Man is significantly stronger than Wolverine. He truly is. Wolverine's not weak by any means, but if it came down to who would hold down who, Spider-Man would hold him down, no questions asked, or he would win an arm wrestling match, for example. But he cannot hit Wolverine hard enough on average for Wolverine to be knocked out. Spider-Man could shake his brain or try to maul in him, kind of like he did during one of the first fights in the cemetery. He was wailing on him with the purpose of putting him down. But it is so difficult to leave lasting damage on Wolverine, and so painful to Spider-Man's hands to be punching like the equivalent of, to us, would be a metal door over and over again trying to knock it out, that he is at a big disadvantage from the get-go. He of course has his webs, and he did get a victory using those before, just tying him up. But unless he gets the right angle at it, Wolverine has slashed his webs mid-air several times. And in that time, he can gain ground on Spider-Man. He can start making it more of a close-up fight like he wants to. This is, of course, in large part due to Spider-Man's personality, where he is not like a straight-up murderer, and he's not going to wrap webbing around Wolverine's neck and hang him from a tree or something, or bind his hands behind him and let him asphyxiate. That isn't, and it will never be, Peter Parker. And because of that, he is at a significant disadvantage when he fights a guy like Wolverine, who's willing to hurt his friends if he has to get a victory or to make a point. And even with that, it was pretty close. 5-3 is pretty close. Score a few of those fights a different way and we'd have a draw. So props to both of these guys. As much as I poke fun at Wolverine for being, an angry, hairy, adulterous, murdering rage machine, he without a doubt has one of the best stories in Marvel. Same as Spider-Man. And these are the icons of the company. And we all love them very much. There is no denying any of that. So this was really fun to make. And if you guys liked it, I will make another one with some other characters from the poll, or maybe something you guys might want to drop in the comments. But for now, thank you so much for watching. We will do this again, and see you next time. Peace.